Good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7:00 p.m. on Tuesday, September 17th, 2024. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our Township website. Please stand to salute the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Prukas? Here. Deputy Mayor Sacramento?
Here.
Mr. Stoller?
Present.
Mayor Romano?
Here.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the September 3rd, 2024 regular Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to approve the September 3rd, 2024 special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, reports. Okay, I'm just gonna go first real quick. So I don't have any reports from any committees. I just wanted to just remind people about a couple of different things. First of all, I know there's a lot of incidents being talked about driving in town. And I want to just remind everybody to be cautious when you're driving through our community, when you're driving through surrounding communities. If we all do our part and just be careful of our own driving habits, I think it will help. I also think that maybe as a township committee, we can reach out to our counterparts in surrounding towns, and maybe they can remind their residents of the same, because a lot of the traffic that comes through town is from people that are coming from other towns on their way to work, on their way home from work, and maybe they just don't observe things the way that we do. I almost saw it myself. A car went over a crosswalk and just came very close to hitting a child on a bicycle. So we just have to all just kind of be a little bit more careful. And then just to add to that, daylight savings is in a couple of weeks. So now it's going to be dark out earlier. So if you're commuting, just remember to wear light clothing and just be extra careful for everyone that's walking. And as a pedestrian, just be careful and look for cars before you step into the crosswalk. And if you have any questions or concerns or complaints, you can email anybody on the township committee. You can call town hall and get any question answered. It just if we do it that way, I think it saves everybody a lot of aggravation and frustration, just to get the correct answer before you just start, going to social media. If you have a question about a permit or something on your house or whatever it is, you're not gonna always get the right answer on social media. But if you call town hall, you're gonna get the right answer. And that was all I wanted to talk about. Committeeman Stoller?
Okay, good. So let me just go through some of these committees. I just think it's great to keep the residents informed, since we spend the time going to these meetings. I'm on 7. Recreation Committee, fall programs are underway. A lot of new programs for 1 to 4-year-olds, and they have a Lego robotics and coding class. So contact the rec committee if you're interested. Also, there's winter program registration is coming out by end of the month, and the pool finished with the season with over 34,500 visits, which is about 3,000 more visits compared to last year. And we know how hot it was, so a good show out on the pool. Special Improvement District, we have a board meeting. I'm liaison and board member on Thursday at 6:30 at Town Hall here in the same room. Feel free to come. The Town Hall Plaza's event is finally confirmed and up on the website. Live music Saturday night every Saturday night through November 2nd from 6:30 to 9:30. Whoever's not been down there, come on out. It's fantastic. And we have an open container rule, which means you can actually drink beer and alcohol and enjoy the lively music. And then speaking of social media, we're offering a new digital campaign called Tour of the Town, which features local boutiques and shops. Board of Education, haven't heard much about the negotiation with the teachers and administrators. Hopefully we hear something soon. Emergency dispatch, Mountain Valley. We hope to hear on September 18th the progress we're making with a consultant that is evaluating the potential move to the new Summit Fire Department, which is just a gorgeous facility. I toured it last week. Flood mitigation, we have a whole bevy of items. October 28th from 7 to 8:30, they're doing a advisory committee at the library right behind us. You know, you have residents can ask any questions and talk about ongoing work, etc. Lots of great things going on. I have about 12 things I could talk about, but I'll save you. If you want, if you're interested, come to the meeting. And then on affordable housing, I'm going to defer to council if anything comes up on any updates on that. I know there's a couple filings today. And then the last thing I want to do is just a nice shout out to the police officers. Our crime KPI numbers came out, and in every category we've improved year over year. So it's a very great job, and month over month. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Sure. A couple of weeks ago, as a planning board, the application that was reviewed was a self-defined multifamily house grouping of houses on Main Street in the commercial medical office zone, which does not allow single-family houses. However, what the development is are 4 houses that are each connected by a carport. So they do qualify as multifamily housing. That was approved by the, defined by the state, and so the application was approved. So what that means is that yet again, someone's found a loophole in our zoning code, and so we need to do something to close that before we see additional units like this. So I've asked the zoning code review committee to come up with a definition of multifamily that will pass legal muster, but something to say something like, in a multifamily development, the walls of these separate units must be attached to each other and not as it is in this unit. This is built on Main Street. It's a narrow but it's a deep lot that's very narrow. So the units actually go from the street, they go in, and so what you'll see from the street is the wall of the first unit. They're 5-bedroom homes. There's no way as single family homes that they would have ever been allowed. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. At the library meeting last night, plans were approved, but that were done by the architect to do a refurbishing of the second floor, and those will be going out for bid. Probably they went out for bid today. We'll follow the bid process, looking for contractors to refurbish the second floor. The Arboretum, I've talked about the upcoming cornhole tournament. There are a couple of flyers on the desk if you'd like to take one. It's a fundraiser, and all the proceeds go to repairing the forest. The Milburn Short Hills Volunteer Ambulance Squad is continuing to look for members. That's very, they're always shorthanded, and they perform an unbelievably wonderful service to the town, and they will be continuing to offer CPR classes in September and October and November, I think into November. The schedule is on their website. All of the classes that they've offered so far have been sold out. So, there's clearly a demand for it. They only charge like $20 to cover the costs of for the materials, but all of the people doing it are volunteers. It's a remarkable service that we should be proud of in this town. And then lastly, I want to thank Mr. McDonald. We've talked about it a couple of times. As of today, If you're interested in seeing pending applications to either the zoning board or the planning board, they're available on the website. Recognize that they're draft and anything subject to change. The town is not prepared to answer any questions about them because they're not final, complete, or ready to go before the board, but it will give you a heads up if something is happening that you might be interested in. So thank you for getting that done.
Deputy Mayor?
Sure, so this week, residents should have received their fourth quarter tax bills. In that envelope, along with the bill, there should have been a flyer from the Environmental Commission providing information about the Open Space Trust Fund referendum question that will be on the ballot in November. If you would like to know more or have questions, please attend the EC's information session on Monday, September 24th from 7 to 8 p.m. on the second floor of the Milburn Library. And I just quickly wanted to dovetail on what Mr. Solar said with regard to the police. I've seen some information being circulated on crime watch groups and online that I think is either incorrect or misleading. And I just wanted to share some of the positive numbers that we have this year. Our police department has done a remarkable job in reducing crime in every single one of the categories that I have in front of me. And so just to put this into perspective, car thefts decreased by 61%, recovered motor vehicles. We actually recovered more stolen cars than were actually stolen. So that means we recovered some that were stolen previously. The number of car burglaries has gone down by 21%. The number of home burglaries has gone down by 17%. So I think, overall, that's a great step in the right direction. I know the Township Committee has, talked with the police on many occasions. We brainstormed, the police have tried implementing some new tactics and procedures, and we have some new technology that's going to be on the way soon that will hopefully help us continue moving in a positive direction. So I just wanted to share that good news because it's not often that we always get to share good news, especially when it comes to crime. So kudos to our police department for all the positive work they're doing.
Thank you.
I actually do have senior citizen, I'm sorry. The senior citizens visited the Seeing Eye back in July and also went to the Cheesecake Factory for lunch. On September 24th, they are taking a trip to the PNC Arts Center to see a tribute band to ABBA. The library programs over the summer were very successful. They had some great speakers, and they also very successful with senior water aerobics. Project Healthy Bones is starting back up on September 16th and September 23rd with orientation. Doctor's note is required to participate. Friday Friends is back at Bauer, 11:30 on Fridays. They're going to be talking about things like scams, Medicare enrollment, and they help the students every fall also making ribbons for Red Ribbon Week. And then local assistance board, the human services coordinator assisted 12 seniors up until the last quarter in June with the food pantry, affordable housing questions, property taxes, and she also had 3 wellness checks with the police department. They were with abuse and neglect. And that was all I had. Okay. Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Mayor. Excuse me. So just a brief update on the fair share housing litigation. As this committee may recall, on July 31st, the court entered an order where we were to have executed the RPM redevelopment agreement within 30 days of that order. If we did not, RPM could submit a proposed order to the court, basically deeming that developer agreement approved by this committee. We have appealed the July 31st order to the appellate division. We sought stay relief from the appellate division, but those motions are pending and have not yet been heard yet by the appellate division. We asked the appellate division to hear it on an expedited basis, and the appellate division denied our application to hear that motion on an expedited basis. So on September 16th, RPM did submit a proposed formal order to the court where the court should deem that the township executed the redevelopers agreement. One thing of note is they put in their order that the agreement would be amended to allow for a cap in lieu of the enhanced remediation, which I know that this committee, I believe, wanted at the time, and the residents voted for through referendum. That order is pending before the court. We'll be filing some papers to clarify some things in that order. Again, we're appealing that order. As far as the appellate division goes, RPM opposition was due to our motion to stay last Friday. RPM timely filed its opposition. Fair Share Housing failed to file a timely opposition. They filed their opposition today. The appellate division requires a motion for leave to file a late brief. They filed their motion for the court to accept their brief late. I have no reason to believe that the court's not going to accept Fair Share Housing's brief late. We do not have a right to reply to either of the oppositions. We have to seek leave from the appellate division to reply. We'll review the papers filed by Fair Share Housing Corporation today and make a determination as to whether or not we're going to seek leave to reply to either of those oppositions. Other than that, there's been no change to the Fair Share Housing litigation. I have no further report unless any committee person has questions. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Yes, just a few brief reports. A reminder again to the community regarding, unfortunately, some additional PSC and G work that will be taking place up in the Long Hill, Tioga area of town. It will also include some other streets on the other side of Great Hills, such as Athens, Rolling Hills. And notices should be going out from the utility company on that work. Again, this is infrastructure improvement for gas lines. Just want to let the community know and the township committee know we have talked about this, and it has the support of the township committee. But I'm happy to say that the community policing unit will be started on Monday, the 23rd of September. I've had the opportunity to meet some of those individuals in the police department that will be working with community policing. And actually, just before the meeting today, I had a conversation with one of the officers, and to say that he was excited would be an understatement. I'm happy to see that, and looking forward to the unit getting started. Just a heads up to businesses in town. The township will be launching a portal within the next 2 weeks for you to register your insurance certificates, which are required by statute. Additional information will go out, and we'll make sure that we work with the SID to get that information out to you all and what is required with that insurance certificate. And lastly, I just want to provide as much notice and heads up as I'm getting it, that I think we can anticipate that the two developments, Annie Says and Silverman, which is on the corner of Chatham and Woodland, are starting to get rolling. They're not putting a shovel in the ground yet, and they're not building anything yet, but they've started having conversations with staff in terms of pre-com meetings and making sure that things are set up in terms of pedestrian safety and different traffic and different things like that. So while I don't anticipate it in the immediate future, I think we can anticipate work sometime in October getting started. Of course, there is still a step in which that agreement needs to come before the township committee for approval. But that is again a sort of a repeat of the zoning that was put in place to allow for those developments. But just wanted to give the community that awareness.
October is kind of a
It is,
Yeah.
I mean, these projects have been sitting out there for a while.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. When invited to speak to offer your comments, please come to the lectern and clearly state your name and whether you are a Milburn resident and or property or business owner. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and are readily available to the public. For the convenience of our community, there is a remote option. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. If you're attending by computer or electronic device, please click the raise hand button and be sure your video is on when you comment. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers shall limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there's 30 seconds remaining. A reminder that this is not a time for dialogue or to debate a matter, and this is a time during our business meeting for the public to offer comments. I will now open the public comment period.
Good evening, Leah Cruz, Short Hill resident. I want to thank everyone here. I don't know who's responsible for putting the speed sign on Hobart Avenue. I do walk my dog there every day and it has made a difference. I see cars start to speed and they see the sign and they actually slow down. So it does work. I am a little worried that once the sign is gone, people will go back to their old ways, but it's just a reminder. I do it too. I know when there's no speed reminder. So it's very effective. Thank you. I also agree with you, Mayor, about what you said about posting on social media and looking for answers. And I always laugh when I see people on Happy Milburn complaining. And I think, why don't you come to a township committee meeting? Get to know the members of our committee. It's not so bad. But maybe you could do like a townwide blast in an email or something about the SDL portal and about ways to get your questions answered, because I agree. You know, you see a lot of people answering questions and they have no idea what they're talking about. And then I just have two general questions. What is going on with the Essex Street one-way project? Is that happening? And just another question about code enforcement. Do we have a code enforcement officer? If so, what exactly does he or she do? What codes are enforced? Who gives guidance as to fines or, you know, what happens? So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you're new to me. I'm new, you can tell.
Come on up, please.
Yes. Good call. Good evening, I'm Evan Frankel, I'm a resident and I own some property in town. Thanks for your time this evening. For the last 20 years, my family and I have lived less than 20 feet from the proposed site for the new Chai Center for Living Judaism. This is where we raised our 2 children, celebrated countless holidays, invested our lives. This town, this neighborhood, it's not just where we live, it's where we belong. And let me begin by being very clear, this is not about religion. I am a Jew. I was bar mitzvah 40 years ago, and I've walked this journey of faith very proudly. My opposition to the Chai Center's proposed 21,027 square foot house of worship with 95 parking spaces and 3 levels of gathering spaces has absolutely nothing to do with religion. This isn't about belief, it's about balance. And let's not mince words, this 21,027 square foot structure with 95 parking spaces, 3 levels of gathering, flex spaces, 8 classrooms and daycare for 50 students will sit in the middle of a residential neighborhood. This is not a small community center, it's a campus, and it's being proposed on a road that is already busy, already crowded, and already under strain. This is Old Short Hills Road and one of the most congested roadways in Milburn. And this proposal is asking us to invite more traffic, more congestion, and more disruption into our daily lives. This project threatens to upend the daily lives of every family there, including mine. We're not just talking about some theoretical nuisance, we're talking about traffic congestion that will clog our roads, preventing emergency vehicles from getting through, longer wait times for ambulances, and overflow parking that will line our streets and block fire and police access. Noise, light pollution, stormwater runoff, all of it will impact this community. It's real, it's tangible, and it's not something we can afford to ignore. And let's talk about property value. We've invested our lives into these homes, and our neighbors have done the same. What happens to that investment when a massive development like this is dropped in the middle of a quiet residential area? Do we shrug our shoulders and hope for the best, or do we stand up and ask the hard questions? But let's be clear for anyone who may misconstrued this, my opposition has nothing to do with the Chai Center's mission or the right of Rabbi Bogomilsky and his congregation to worship. The rabbi has been running the Chai Center near my home for years, and aside from a few parking issues and some noisy celebrations during holidays, our relationship has been good. And I've reviewed the legal case of the Chi Center for Living Judaism versus the Township of Millburn, and I agree with the US government's support of the Chi Center's right to have their case fully reviewed. Religious freedom matters. It is in fact a cornerstone of our democracy, but this isn't about belief, it's about balance, and it's about the impact of what happens next. Because if we allow this 21,027 square foot development to move forward, where does it stop? What happens when 165 Old Short Hills merges with 1 Jefferson? And suddenly we're not talking about a house of worship anymore, we're talking about a full-blown campus. A campus right in the middle of a residential neighborhood with all the traffic, noise, and disruption that comes with it. This is everyone's neighborhood. It's where we raised our children, built our businesses, we've made our lives. We didn't anticipate such a large-scale institution changing the character of a residential
Thank you, I'm
community.
sorry, your time's up,
All right.
thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
You can email that also.
I will email, absolutely,
you.
thanks. If you want to finish, it's fine.
Oh, sure.
Right at the line there.
Sure.
Thank you.
We didn't anticipate.
Just your name,
sorry.
please, I'm sorry. Your
My
name.
name is Alana Mizrahi. I live relatively close
Thank
to
you.
the noted family. We didn't anticipate such a large-scale institution changing the character of a residential community. So I stand here today to ask you, our elected leaders, our representatives, to think about the long-term impacts, not just for me and my family, but for every family in this neighborhood and for the families who will call this their neighborhood for the future. That's me and my young family. Let's preserve what makes this community special. Let's protect it from becoming something it was never meant to be. And before moving forward, I ask that this committee take time to commission thorough township-led studies that assess the real impacts on traffic, noise, the environment, and security, among other concerns. Those studies will ensure that the structure being proposed does not impose an unintended consequence on the quality of life that we as residents of this town hold dear. We owe it to the community to make decisions based on thoughtful, deliberate consideration, not just of today, but of the future we all hope to build. And again, this is about balance. I myself am a member of the Jewish community as well. And I can say firsthand, having lived in this neighborhood for several years, that this concerns me. Not just 3 weeks ago, my car was struck at the intersection of Parsonage Hill Road and Short Hills Road in an attempt to take my children to the pool. 2 children of mine were in the car. And that was the second instance in a matter of 24 hours where I was in immediate impact of a moving vehicle. The day prior was on Hobart Road, where I had a young driver coming into alternate side traffic. The incident where we were hit at Parsonage Hill Road, the driver sped off. It was a hit and run. So I know that leaving the outlet of our road onto Old Short Hills Road, which is immediately across from this proposed site, is a scary turn for me every day. I take that turn to commute for the trains. I take that turn to take my children through town. And I can assure you that this is something that, is something that has an immediate impact to my children and our well-being in the neighborhood. So again, I think I stand with Evan in his remarks. I have no objections to their right to worship, but it has real concerns to me in terms of its impact on our living and the traffic and impacts to our family.
Thank you.
My name is Rachel Lerner, and I'm a resident in South Mountain too. This is my first time in person. I did via Zoom for over 2 years when my son also had an incident in South Mountain where he was, there was an incident where he was crossing our street and he jumped off a scooter, and it was one of our neighbors who hit the scooter and not my son. It took close to 2 years to change our intersection, and I worked with Alex, Tara, multiple people with it, and then recently in the past 2 weeks, one of our neighbor's sons also had an incident with a vehicle, apparently on their bicycle. I won't speak for the family or the traffic report that you can look at, but it is just highlighting again and again that our streets are not very safe. Even in South Mountain itself, even with the speed limit being 25 miles per hour. And so again, it was a neighbor that was the incident with us. So it's not just people that are driving through from different towns. It is our neighbors, unfortunately. I would like to highlight and just make a couple of recommendations. And I will be working with PSAB again in the future and helping other colleagues and neighbors in mind to guide them through the process that we experienced. But there should be, I would like to pick up again with advising increased crosswalks on Ridgewood Road. Right now, there's only 2 that I am aware of when working with engineering, as children are walking to Washington School from South Mountain. And it's a very large area where there's not crosswalks. 2, I would really appreciate it if PSAB had increased frequency in meetings. I found that the reason why it took 2 years to change our intersection was because we would have a traffic report, a traffic study done, and then 2 or 3 or 4 months later, we'd have another meeting. And then we would meet with engineering or meet with the traffic bureau, and then would have to wait another 2 or 3 months for things to be addressed. And so I think to increase efficiency and to increase safety, increasing those PSAB meeting frequencies would be very helpful. And then the third thing is regarding Parsonage Hill Road and White Oak Ridge Road, which I'm really sorry about your incident. But I make that turn pretty daily now that my children are older and doing multiple sports, coming from Milburn and making a left to White Oak Ridge Road from Parsonage Hill. There's no visibility whatsoever. And when you're making a left-hand turn, I'm requesting that there be a left turning arrow or delay as well, because it's a very unsafe intersection. And it's hard to, as I've learned, it's really, really hard to track near misses. But there was a hit and run. And so I think that's a really important thing. But I think everyone's efforts in their time. But I really just would encourage your thoughts and moving things along in an expeditiously way, improving our safety, because our children are our future. And if we keep traumatizing them with these traffic incidents and everything else that they're going through, we're not going to have much of a
Thank you.
great future.
Thank
Thank you very much.
Charles Bambara, 27-year resident of Short Hills, Milburn Short Hills, to be more specific. First of all, I want to thank Mayor for bringing up about pedestrian safety. I also think it would be appropriate to remind everyone about cycling safety. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen cyclists without helmets, especially that it's getting darker, cycling without a light on. So, maybe it's a good time to just recap some of the appropriate laws when we're doing this, pertaining to cycling and pedestrians. When pedestrians are walking, a lot of the streets in town don't have sidewalks, and vehicles are supposed to move over and slow down. And I go for walks frequently, and many times they don't, especially with dogs and young children that are less predictable than adults. The second thing, I want to thank my fellow residents that stood here in opposition to the Chai Center. I am not Jewish, however, I have neighbors and close friends who are. I think those of you who know me know that I am not anti-Semitic. I stood October 7th at the candlelight vigil with the candle in support of the Jewish community last year. But I'm concerned about the precedent being set. This has, again, nothing to do with religion. It's the precedent being set of a person or entity buying up contiguous plots of land and then putting up larger structures and larger developments, particularly as we're talking about affordable housing and builders' suits. We're leaving the door wide open to the next step, which is builders coming in and buying up contiguous plots and then putting up multi-unit housing in residential neighborhoods. So that's my opposition to that. And that's all I have. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jeffrey Feld. I live in the poet section, in excess of 30 years. Today is Constitution Day, protecting our liberties, these people. As to the agenda, there's a resolution to reducing the capital count. Please look at the first sentence. Do you have the proper statutory enabling statute? I think you just quoted administrative code, which is not a statute. And there's a question whether a resolution can amend an ordinance, which was what was done originally for your appropriations. As to the Citizens Advisory Affordable Housing Committee, prior to this, I did send my typical email to you raising some questions. What were the number of applicants per district? What were the metrics used for their selections? And are any of the people that are being selected, are they attorneys, or are they more involved in the real estate industry? Later on, there'll be a first reading on the bond for the town hall. Based on my email, the supplemental debt statement was filed, after my email. The public needs to look at supplemental debt statements and understand how much additional debt has been authorized by this township in the last year. Besides paper mill, 22 East Willow, and now the project. And also for the people who are going to be going to the planning board, I recommend that you look at the master plan. Because I applaud you, because the renovation of town hall contradicts the master plan for 2018. And there's language in the master plan about preserving the residential character of certain neighborhoods. And I think you should really be referring it and looking at the 100 and some odd pages. It's on the website. I think I renew my request that we have an affordable housing library. It's hard to monitor the trial and appellate courts because the appellate division does not give access to people like me, and there's been 2 motions filed. There's questions I have as whether the trial court has jurisdiction to grant the relief that RPM is asking for once an appeal has filed. And also in the letter that was RPM filed, they talked about 22 East Willow, about a grant application. I think we need to clarify about, was that money really used to relocate to 22 East Willow, or was it really going to be used for JFK? I know the status of the investigation regarding the municipal criminal case. Yesterday in the Star Ledger, there was a summary of an audit for Spotswood, and they recommended and commented that if you retain a professional, you need to have a contract and be approved by the resolutions. I'll come back later today and talk about other things.
Thank you.
Hi, Jim Pasternak. I just wanted to say thank you for the appointment to the Citizens Affordable Advisory Committee. I appreciate a lot of work needs to be done, and I look forward to serving the community in this capacity. Thank you. I just want to say it's great to see a lot of new people come to the meetings. I think what is worth saying is that it's really important that we stay involved in our local government, because you find out about things like after the fact and it's almost too late. So it's never too late to voice your concerns, but you've got to stay active in our local government, or these are the kinds of things that occur. Some feedback that I've been hearing from residents while campaigning for Alex Saltzman, with the amount of new development that's occurring in town, both residents who have been here a long time and even new residents do seem taken aback by what's happening. They don't understand some of the expansion projects like the High Center. I think it would be good for the town to communicate in one place somehow all that is happening, given that people don't come to meetings, they don't really understand. I think it's just good service to the community to communicate that type of information. The other thing I'd say is, based on some comments that I've seen on social media like you guys have, I know that you guys encourage citizens who have questions, comments, constructive ideas, and policy ideas to come forward to the committee, as well as the various boards and subcommittees, without the fear of being labeled, admonished on social media, and ostracized. We're a diverse community with many views and capabilities. It's just wrong that people somehow feel that they're going to be called whatever, anti-Semites or whatever it is, to voice their concerns. We have to stop that. We should not feel that, especially our elected leaders. We will be the best we can be if we can encourage thoughtful debate in whatever matters citizens wish to engage. Just on some couple specifics on 85 Woodland, given that that's ready to go, I just wondered, there were a couple of outstanding issues that I remember being debated, but I'm not sure how they got resolved. That curbside parking that was on Woodland, and I think there was something to do with the rooftop, but I just don't remember. I know they were kind of being discussed, and I don't remember how they got resolved. We also had talked about code enforcement. I know, Alex, you were saying it'd be good to have an additional staff member. What can we do to help you get that accomplished? And the strategic long-range planning effort that you are undertaking. And lastly, I want to commend the Milburn Short Hills Chinese Association for the successful Moon Gala, for inviting all of the township officials and representatives, gave us a lot of chance to mingle informally, and I thank them for doing that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Christine Best, Melbourne Township. Thank you guys, everybody, for the Rocktoberfest. It looked amazing. I'm sorry that I was not well enough to be there, but it looked amazing. I'm here today to just talk about development issues going on in the town, and particularly, I'm concerned about a lot of them, and I've brought this up before about design standards, and I think it's really important as, you know, you see different big box sort of aesthetics coming into town, and it does affect neighborhoods, et cetera, from a visual perspective. I am a trained designer, so I feel that I could maybe say that. I want to talk about the campus or the building that is being built on 165 Old Short Hills Road. I'm just looking at it as a land issue completely, and I think it's really important when a building of 22,000 square feet, as the gentleman before said, has close to 100 parking spaces and quite a bit of impervious coverage, and also is designed as a very square-looking modern style that won't sit into the neighborhood as well visually. It's just a statement, nothing more than that. You know, should be discussed with the town. It's a big building. It's kind of like as big of a building as doing one of the affordable housings almost in some ways. So I think it's really important. And to Jean's, attempt, I think it's really sad that people make comments that are discriminatory. And, you know, I didn't even really want to say this, but it's like, you know, my husband's Jewish, my mom's husband's Jewish, my dad's wife is Jewish. 80% of my friends are Jewish, probably, you know, another set is interfaith, and interfaith people actually are really the least discriminatory of all because they're going to marry somebody of the opposite faith and not have any concerns with it. So I got a lot of flack for making comments, and it's strictly based on land use. And I think that really needs to stop. It's really saddening. And I actually fully support having a center, and I would like to possibly, maybe we could build a commission to help, you know, get that set up in a way that's amicable to other people in the township. And I think that's a really important thing, to actually reach out to the center. I fully support their right to do, you know, what they want to do in terms of religious practices. So again, I don't need to go back through the noise and light pollution issue. I think there's a lot of things that could be thought about if it stays in that place, like keeping the streetscape and the, you know, the plantings in place, possibly taking the impervious coverage instead of it being asphalt, and, you know, dropping it down and just maybe having a stone type of thing, re-looking at the aesthetic of the building so it sits visually into the space, i.e. Temple Sinai, for example, and Summit sits really beautifully into the residential space. I've been in that temple many, many times for many services, or Shari Tafil is a really good example of how something can sit into a community visually. You know, so that goes back to having design standards in the town, and that's just my personal opinion as a designer, and I think it would be a really, really great thing. And I do want to ask the town one last question. I'm almost done in that. Due diligence. Please review the land use issues and go back to 1899 and 1906 and look at the William Hill Tract and the AFR Rickers, because there is a clause in there for land use. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone online? Good evening.
Good evening. Oops, I'm sorry, my phone is crazy.
Fine.
Sorry if I'm upside down, I apologize. I'm actually circling back from the September 3rd, Perry Urso, Upper Milburn Avenue, the September 3rd meeting. I would say, please remember that you all are fiduciaries of the public trust. How much trust monies will you be willing to authorize to defend the Bear Property versus Milburn litigation? You know, or should know, that prior TCs, best practice inventory questions, and the state mentioned the boundaries are too large and each district needs to be its own independent SID. Today, I followed up on a pending Oprah from September 3rd, requesting all attorney time summaries from 2021 to present, referencing the Bear Property versus Milburn litigation. Ask yourselves, who are the beneficiaries of this litigation? Is it the retained attorneys, the hired professionals, or, of course, the one district out of the 5, the downtown? What are the cross benefits to continue this litigation? I leave you with a Tom Cruise movie, The Firm. Think about how his character brought down the law firm. Answer, false billing. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. Good. Okay, I will now close public comment. Would anyone like to comment? Committeeman Cohen, why don't we start with you today?
Sure, I would just, I appreciate the concerns raised by the people here talking about the Kai Center. I just would point out that this is really a matter before the planning board, and that meets tomorrow, same time, 7:30. It starts, it'll be the first of, I'm sure, more than one session on this development. While 2 of us are on the planning board, there are 7 other people who will also be involved in that decision, and they will be talking about some of the points you raised, like traffic and impervious coverage, and those sorts of things. There's ample opportunity at the planning board to raise your concerns, also to hear the testimony as to how those issues will be addressed. So I would certainly encourage all of you, all interested parties, to come tomorrow night at 7:30 and after the first of what I believe will be several meetings on the Kai Center.
Thank you. Committeeman Stoller?
Sure, and I absolutely mimic those sentiments that you really have to show up, stand up, and speak up at the planning board. That's where it's pushed forward and they put a solution together, then it comes to us for a vote. Obviously,
Not even on that.
Oh, okay. So that's where you really want to press it. So I wholly support, being vocal, showing up, standing up, and speaking up. It's imperative. Understanding that separating the religious aspect with the quality of life aspect and what it means to residents is very important. Everyone has to hear that message. And also understand what the other uses of that property may or may not be, and understand, try to get behind that as well. Let's see here. Christine Best, I could not agree more. Facebook is a cesspool. It's a cesspool of people some people just lose their civility and their kindness and whole understanding and respect when they get onto those social media platforms. Same thing with the political environment. The divisiveness in this country has never been higher, and it starts here at home on local issues and working together to get the best possible resolution. I certainly appreciate you guys coming out tonight and being so civil in the discourse. Leah Cruz, agree. I think the other thing we need to do to her suggestion is really, and to you guys, is this portal SDL. That's the reporting mechanism for the town. And when it goes in there, it doesn't come out. It either gets crossed off and completed, or it stays there. So that is a great mechanism to get your concerns into the town, whether it's a broken light, a major pothole, the turn at White Oak and Parsonage Hill, and I have 4 children, and I've spent nearly half my life waiting at that light to make that left turn. It's crazy. Luckily, I haven't been hit. But there are some other places. We're in the process of doing a town-wide traffic study. Maybe Alex will give an update on that a little bit later. But we really believe that's imperative to get that look, because our the fabric of our community, or the infrastructure is changing. It's certainly going to change. The Metropolitan just came in, the Hearth just came in, and he says it's going in, Woodland's going in, the Upton. I mean, it takes me 25 minutes to get across town, not even during rush hour. And it does cause stress on the cut-through neighborhoods too. We have to be cognizant of that and do whatever we can to protect those cut-through neighborhoods. That's pretty much it for me, thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Deputy Mayor.
Sure. So I'm gonna start by addressing what a lot of you are here for. So the project at 165 Short Hills Road is certainly contentious. I understand that residents that live near it are concerned about traffic, environmental impact, you know, the diminishment of the value of their property, given that it's now gonna not necessarily be a residential neighborhood anymore. I mean, it is in some respects, but you're gonna have this building that is not residential. It's a little bit of a history lesson, though. I think it's important that people understand that some of the individuals that are trying to build this have tried to build in other locations in town, and they've been unable to do so for zoning reasons or pushback. And I believe in one case, there was a residents that banded together and got involved in a lawsuit, and you know, they approach it that way. So, you know, I think we need to keep in mind the fact that the people that are trying to build this house of worship just want to build a house of worship. And through decisions made by others that came before us, they weren't able to do that. And so now, you know, they're trying to build there. And, you know, what makes it challenging is there are federal laws called religious land use. It's the RLUPA, Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. And that makes it very difficult to stop a house of worship from going into an area simply because that area is not zoned for it. And this is something that our legal counsel, probably the planning board's legal counsel could speak to more. But, you know, I have to understand that as a township, we're limited in what we can do. If this were, you know, a shopping mall, or, you know, a school even, there might be more latitude for us to do things. So I just want to level set. But that being the case, I encourage you all to look at what has happened in the past and what has either been successful or not successful, if you guys want to take it upon yourselves to fight this in some manner. Additionally, I think that as a township, you know, while the planning board's going to make the decision, what we should do on the township committee level is take a look at our zoning codes and our land use codes, ones that we are able to control, and let's learn from this. You know, as was brought up earlier, you know, it was just it was 2 weeks ago, I was in a planning board meeting, and some developer figured out a creative way to get around our zoning laws with regards to multifamily housing. And in response, you know, Michael Cohen and I spoke after and said, let's do something about this, and we're starting to do that. So I think we need to look at our zoning as a whole and figure out where there's loopholes and figure out where there are things that can be done to improve. I also want to point out that had the historic district gone in effect last year, that house would not have been so easily torn down. And you guys might not be sitting here. We might not be having this conversation. So given that there's a potential for this to be something bigger, you know, those are just rumors. I can't comment on rumors, but maybe the neighborhood wants to take it upon themselves to figure out if they want to advocate for turning themselves into a historic district. You guys are the ones that live there, and you guys are the ones that are going to be most affected by this. I encourage you to talk to your neighbors and collectively, you know, come up with a plan of what you would want to do moving forward. All right, on to another subject. So pedestrian safety. I've seen stuff on social media. Some of you have brought stuff up. You know, while we are going to be doing a townwide traffic study, and I believe we're getting bids and proposals for that. Maybe one thing we can do, and Mr. McDonald, maybe you can ask the police chief this, maybe we could do a ticket blitz, just to remind people. You know, sometimes you need something a little bit more than a sign. Maybe people need to get a ticket, remind people to slow down and be more careful. So maybe that's something we can do in the short run, you know, while we look to improve safety. Let's see here. Ms. Pasternak, the code enforcement question, I think that that's a great question. I know that we have talked up here about potentially getting another code enforcement official. Mr. McDonald, if you could give us an update on that, that'd be great. And if there's something that we have to do as a township committee to enable that, please let us know so that we can figure out if there's action that we want to take. But I do think that our code enforcement is understaffed. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Committeewoman Prukas,
I have nothing additional to add.
Mr. McDonald?
Just to respond to Ms. Cruz's comments, one is, and to everyone on the township committee, we do encourage residents to put their concerns or their complaints in through the SDL portal. We've certainly been working to improve our process with that as well, to make sure that these are reviewed each week, those that are outstanding. Also understanding that some of those concerns are a lot more complex than filling a pothole, and so some of those do take a little bit more time to respond to or address or see what a potential solution is. But it's just a good way for us to track and understand what sorts of concerns are out there and what sorts of complaints. We do, certainly we also will answer the phone and answer those as well. We do have a code enforcement officer. They are full-time. It was but probably 8 or 9 years ago that we didn't even have a code enforcement officer. We do have one full-time person. I think that if I had to judge it based on workload, because it does fluctuate, a lot of times it is most prevalent, certainly during the warmer months. And each season has its own types of complaints. Sometimes you get a lot of the individuals haven't shoveled their snow or haven't cut their grass, and so this is speaking to a little bit of what kind of codes they enforce. Where the code enforcement officer I think does run into some workload issues is that they are generally responsible for enforcing the general code of the township. There's also a zoning code which needs to be enforced. They assist with that. There are also grading permits. UCC code is done by the building department, but they do lend a hand. I would say that if we were going to pursue, I think, an additional code enforcement officer, I would advise that we do so on a part-time basis and make sure that the workload is actually there, given the way that it can fluctuate, and sometimes it's just based on could be based on the amount of construction that has happened in the township. We get a lot of complaints about fence, construction sites. Sometimes those complaints are about people having to deal with construction next to them. Sometimes they're very legitimate complaints that need to be addressed. So that would be my suggestion on code enforcement. I don't know that there would be anything that the committee would need to do with regard to that. It's just also a matter of finding people that want to do the work. We have been looking for an individual to staff the tax office, not the tax collector. She's still here. She's fantastic. But help in the tax office, and that has been ongoing for approximately 6 months. So, but we will get it out there. We'll see what we can find. Just to answer Ms. Lerner, and we have talked about this a few times in past meetings, there is a crosswalk that is anticipated on Ridgewood and Ivy. We are awaiting our CDBG grant funding to put in that crosswalk. That was part of that work, in addition to other ADA accessible crossings and changing out the curb ramps to make them accessible. Again, I think that we have done a lot to evaluate South Mountain in particular over the years. Some of that involves discussions about normalizing intersections, which is a difficult conversation at times. Some of that has been about stop signs or additional enforcement and different things like that. As she had mentioned, PSAB is always a great location to have those conversations and let that group know what residents' concerns are. But also, I have to piggyback on what the mayor had stated. It is really imperative that we as a community take ownership as well, and understand that a lot of the times it's individuals driving through the community that are in a hurry to get someplace that aren't thinking that, that one time could be the time that you make the mistake and hit somebody's kid or get in a car accident or whatever it may be. And so, I see it as well when I drive in, and people don't want to wait for the person to turn into high school, and so they'll go into the other lane and drive down Milburn Avenue in the other lane. But it's and I think the mayor said it well, is if everybody takes ownership and takes part in that. I made a decision a long time, like a few years ago, that didn't matter whether I thought the person was really crossing or not, I will stop when I see somebody near a crosswalk. And then if they wave me on and say they don't want to cross, that's great. I'll move on. But I think it's just kind of making those decisions ourselves. But it was about 165. And to Mr. Cohen's point, I'll just piggyback on this as well. On the planning board and zoning board pages are now pages called pending applications. And those are applications that have not been reviewed yet, nor have they been deemed complete. But certainly residents can go there to view things that have been received by the zoning office. That's all I have.
Mr. Cantor.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Feld raised a question to resolution 24-219. The reference to the section is in the title of the resolution, so it won't have any real effect as titles don't really have any impact, but it does reference 5:30-4.1 ed sec. So the ed sec would include all sections in that code, and I reviewed the code, and section 5:30-4.4b would allow an amendment to be approved by resolution of the governing body. So I believe that is both the correct section, and a resolution is the correct legislation to perform the action that the committee is looking for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The Township Committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regard to any items listed on the consent agenda? May I have a motion to approve Resolution 24-214 through Resolution 24-220, which are listed on the consent agenda? May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Purvis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes. Okay. Reverend Heather Brannon, Milburn Township resident in the Wyoming section, was removed from the appointment resolution from the following appointment resolution, seeing she's no longer available to serve. Are there any comments from the committee in regard to resolution 24-221 as revised? No. May I have a motion to approve resolution 24-221? May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Purvis?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes. Committeeman Cohen, you are scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2690-24.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2690-24, bond ordinance to authorize the town hall renovation and addition project in, by, and for the township of Milburn in the county of Essex, state of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $14,500,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. This is self-explanatory. This is for the town hall renovation. This is the amount of money that we're allocating to a bond. I would hope that perhaps it'll come in lower than this, but time will tell. And the longer we take to do this, the less likely it would be to come in lower with everything going up. But anyway, that's what it's for. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item, and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Purpose?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes.
Thank you.
Committee, Ms. Stoll, you are scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2683-24.
I present for consideration ordinance entitled ordinance number 2683-24. Capital ordinance of the Township of Milburn in the County of Essex, New Jersey, authorizing the making of various improvements in, by, and for the parking utility of the township, appropriating therefore the sum of $200,000 and providing that such sum so appropriated shall be raised from the parking utility capital improvement fund. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law.
I declare the hearing open.
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading and the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on the final reading in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Purpose?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2684-24. I present for consideration an ordinance titled ordinance number 2684-24, an ordinance of the Township of Milburn, County of Essex, accepting drainage easements over various properties in the township and authorizing the execution of easement agreements. Tonight is a time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open. Okay. I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading and the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Purpose?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, where am I here? 2684. Okay, 2688-24. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled Ordinance 2688-24. Temporary closure of Town Hall Plaza between Essex Street and Milburn Avenue pursuant to NJSA 40:67-16.9 in the Township of Milburn, County of Essex, New Jersey. The purpose of this ordinance is to establish a temporary street closure pursuant to NJSA 40:67-16.9 on Town Hall Plaza between Milburn Avenue and Essex Street for outdoor dining and other permitted uses beginning September 3rd, 2024 and ending November 4th, 2024. Tonight is the time set for public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open.
Jeffrey Feld, from the Code section. I just have some simple questions. What is the effective date of this ordinance if it's adopted tonight? And can you operate before it's effective? And second, let's go back in history. We shut down Town Hall Plaza because we did not do the Main Street closure. But that decision was made after the adoption of the SID budget and the township's budget. How was the township, this closure funded if monies were appropriated? Now you're asking to extend it. How are you funding it and where are those monies coming from appropriations? Remember, you're fiduciaries of a public trust. You only spend monies that are appropriated properly. I know that the last 2 months of the year you could come back and change, but I think you had to keep focusing on your fiduciary obligations of a budget that you do in the appropriations. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Thank you.
Good evening, Carrie Urso, Upper Milburn Avenue. Regarding the ordinance 2688-24, I also echo resident Mr. Feld's public comment and ask, is there proper funding appropriated within the budgets to support this ordinance? Prior to adoption, I asked the question, has this body requested an analysis of the 4 other districts outside of the downtown. What's the effect before, during, and after when visitors are being funneled to the Town Hall Plaza, which is located in the downtown? Thank you, and I'll look forward to hearing an answer.
Thank you. I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Conlon, do you do comments or?
I don't.
Do you want to respond to her? I mean,
Comment?
and,
Go ahead, Committeeman Storer,
Yeah.
since you're upset.
just to make it perfectly clear, we will never ever shirk our financial responsibilities as it pertains to any matter in front of us or the community. The public trust fund is the tax dollars that we're entrusted to spend and spend appropriately. Our attorneys and our business administrator have procedurally made this correct and confirmed and given us affirmation that this is the correct process. So I don't want to make like there's any type of fog that people can't see through, that this isn't procedurally correct, attorney?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Mr.
I think to answer the question about the fiduciary is that, and certainly Mr. Feld, understands that there's different appropriations in the municipal budget. Usually they're broken down by salary and wage and operating expenses. And so therefore, any additional funds that go towards Town Hall Plaza are taken out of operating expenses. In particular, we do have a line item called celebrations that we utilize for different events. And this is one of those that we use for that. But again, it's a pot of money that is used, the budget as a whole thing can be used for a variety of different reasons. And certainly things come up during the year and there is an expectation that there's flexibility within the budget for us to be able to do the things that the community wants, in addition to something like Town Hall Plaza. And therefore, I think we are being fiduciaries of the public trust, as Mr. Feld has.
Right, and as the 5 township committee members, I think we all believe, and I want to speak to you that we are here to use our experience, our years of kids in the school system, of the businesses and such, and come to where we've been able to do multiple presentations and debates and such in front of the public to get elected to this position, to make the appropriate decisions based on those experiences. And from that standpoint, I can unequivocally tell you guys how successful that Township Hall Plaza has been and what a great gathering spot it has been. And I'm also liaison on the Special Improvement District. But it was a phenomenal success. It was asked to be extended through November 3rd. So the Halloween celebrations for all of us who have kids can be done there as well. And every Saturday night there will be live musicians and music there. This might get a little cold, might need a jacket, but it's gonna be fun.
Yeah, just real quick. So the reason we did the Town Hall Plaza closure is because a lot of people had concerns about safety with the Main Street closure. There were traffic concerns, et cetera. So I think this committee came up with a fantastic alternative, which was the Town Hall Plaza. And I think we were able to have programming there over the summer that we wouldn't necessarily have been able to have on Main Street. There was a movie night. I mean, it's just been a space that people could enjoy all throughout the day. And one of the things that I think is beneficial is people could come there and they didn't necessarily have to go and buy food at a restaurant, right? They didn't have to go there for a meal. Whereas with Main Street, if you went there, most of the seats were for restaurants. And, it was just a different animal entirely. So I think this has been wildly successful. I hope it's something that we continue. And, I think we should give credit to those that came up with the compromise. And I think it turned out to be something really beneficial to the town.
I'm sorry. I think also just, I think what Mr. Fell was driving at is the effective date of the ordinance is following its publication, right? But maybe he's asking why it remained closed while this process was taking place. And so just to answer that question, is we actually reached out to the DOT, who we've dealt with in the past, just to let them know that we were gonna do that, because it did not make sense to move things while we were going through a 2-week process. I had not heard any objection. I don't know that that means that we hadn't heard at all, or whether she did respond and didn't have any objection to it, but certainly it was more prudent to just keep it closed while we were going through this process than pull everything out and then put everything back and reclose the road. So if that's what Mr. Feld was driving at, that's the explanation for that.
And it'll be cured with the retroactive effect of the ordinance.
And quite frankly, there's an issue with materiality as well. You know, we have a $200 million township budget, of which we control 65 million. The rest, you know, taxes for Essex County, which we give a lot, 50 million a year is crazy. And then the educational system. So, you know, to have something that we see as so successful and people are enjoying so much, to tear it down and then bring it out, bring it back, you know, for a couple $1,000s, whatever it is, you know, there's got to be some matter of materiality in there as well.
Yeah, and I think it would be fiscally irresponsible for us to pay to take it down and put it back up a couple of weeks later. So if you look at it from that perspective, I think it made a lot of sense.
Maybe Woman Krukus, did you want to add?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes. Committeeman Stoller, you are scheduled to sponsor 2689-24.
Sure, now this is the fun part of it. I present for consideration ordinance entitled ordinance 2689-24 ordinance creating a temporary open container area. Tonight is the time set for public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open, and just to give everyone a little context here, basically Township Plaza is open for people to bring in their own beverages. There's beverages sold there, sometimes by local vendors, the wine cooler shop, and other people. And what it does is it really brings up and you know, makes people want to come down, order Chinese food, bring Chinese food, pizzas, whatever it is. We have local sponsors that paid for a majority of this, and it's just been a fantastic experience also.
Anyone online?
I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and the township clerk be directed to publish ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Sakamandy?
Yes.
Mr. Stoller?
Affirmative.
Mayor Romano?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have no matters of old business, no matters of new business, public comment. This public comment period is to allow for final comments from the community. When invited to speak to offer your comments, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and whether you are a Milburn resident and or property or business owner. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and readily available to the public. A reminder that in order to help facilitate in an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers shall be limited to their comments to 1 3-minute session.
Jeffrey Feld, we'll go back to something that Alex said at the beginning of the meeting about the insurance registration. That's been a best practice for a couple of years, and the question is, to make that requirement, other municipalities adopt an ordinance. Are you planning to adopt an ordinance, or are you just gonna send out a letter? And where are we gonna repeat the problem that we had with the solid waste when you changed with the commercial that you had to do by ordinance before you sent out the letters? What is the status on the 9/11 memorial, the expansion of the plaque? About the open space tax, I haven't been attending the public forums. I have been asking some questions how the procedure is going to work. I still have not received answers. As to the effective date, many of you are not attorneys. There's a statute that you can use to make the ordinance co-effective immediately. You adopt a resolution. You can waive the estoppel period. Why didn't you? Well, that's all I'm asking you. Why didn't someone give you that advice? Like procedurally, you adopt a resolution, declare that you have a health and safety emergency, be the market and building, and you can have this and avoid it. All I'm doing is showing you issues. Tomorrow, you will be getting a present. I had to file a trial brief and everything in the Bear properties. You'll see the issues. I'm not, I think we did that. Here we're talking about outrageous about the affordable housing. We've been asking, has the township ordered the transcripts from the fairness or the conditional compliance hearing? The answer we've had is no one has custody and control of this. How are we defending the most important litigation without the basic what happened? When Judge Garner answered and said, I never told anyone that the public could not know the final settlement terms until after consideration. It's outrageous when we talk about fiduciary duties. And many of you who were not at that hearing, it's all hearsay that you hear. Read the transcripts.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to? Oh.
Charles Bambara, 27-year resident of Melbourne Short Hills. I want to speak in support of Christine Best. I'm not sure how many of you may have seen her post regarding the Chai Center on Old Short Hills Avenue, but she posted the plot plan, and she questioned some of the important considerations regarding stormwater runoff, property use, etc. She was accused of being anti-Semitic. I've gotten to know Christine. I know her husband is Jewish, and I know that the last thing she is anti-Semitic, yet she was accused of that to a point that she and I spoke on the phone, and I wondered if I should respond to some of those posts, and we decided collectively that I would stay out of it because I didn't need to be attacked and accused of the same thing. But I think that kind of banter, accusing people of being anti-Semitic or anti any religion or race or anything, has no place in our township chat groups. They serve a purpose for the town, for residents to communicate and share their thoughts. But I do hope and wish that residents are mindful that opinions are expressed and they're merely opinions, and accusations that have no base should be avoided. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Best here again. Alex, Annette, I have to thank you for my lovely road to go on. I complained, I moaned, I pitched.
You're welcome.
The road's beautiful.
Thank you.
It's amazing. Thank you so much. I stand in awe.
Thanks for being patient.
Okay, I wasn't patient, I was rude, but I'm gonna own it, okay? I got the road, and thank you. All right, so I'm just gonna talk, I kind of didn't get through, I have a point of view on the native plant proposal. I don't know where it is, and I apologize, I was not well last week on the last meeting. So I just gonna kind of haphazardly talk through this because I didn't put together a great presentation here. But as you guys consider the purported benefits of native plants and the pedestal like placement we put native plants on, and the possible policing at a level of 70%, I know it's not going to residents at this point. I just want you to consider a different point of view. They're always consistently framed as being weak and incapable of survival with lots of water. As an avid gardener, I do a lot of my own plantings and a lot of the clearing of the garden. And I can tell you that very few non-native plants are invasive. I mean, Japanese knotwood is disgustingly invasive and that should be eradicated. But I will point out the benefit of that. I actually take that for cancer prevention. So there's a lot of that's an actual herb. And so there's benefits to having that in the United States because it actually can be cultivated. So I'm just trying to put everybody's head around this fear of non-native plants. And I just want to talk about some, and then Tom had gone through all the different diseases for these native trees. And I really think he was so eloquent in what he stated, and he really made so many very, very valuable points, which I talked about last time. And there's so many, like, I have an elm tree right now. I think it has elm disease. I think I might have oak canker on another one. You've got the wilt disease on some of the red buds, so the verticulum wilt, the elm zigzag softfly, thousand cankers, black walnut disease. I mean, there's hardly any black walnut trees. So I really think that we have to think about biodiversity, looking at plants as them, are they invasive or non-invasive? Is it a noxious weed or is it not? Like bamboo is very invasive, but I have to tell you, it actually curbs greenhouse emissions way more than a full standing of trees does. So you have to look at it from that perspective. I know we banned it, so I think you guys banned it. So I just, one of the things I want to point out is the USDA has a very harsh and inaccurate definition in their executive order of what a native plant is or isn't. So basically, they consider all non-native plants to be invasive, and it's just not a true statement. I'll give you an example. I have Japanese knotweed. I'm not Japanese knotweed. I have Japanese anemone in my garden, and it's everywhere. It's so beautiful. I love it, but it's so invasive. Okay, so it's a native plant, and so like poison ivy is a native plant. Like, should we cultivate that? It kills trees. So I can't go down the list. I'll come back another time.
Thank
But
you.
I do want to support your point of view on that. On some of
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you.
Stay off of Facebook. Everybody, everybody. Stay off. Come here, just talk to us. Stay off of Facebook.
Hate Facebook. Bane my existence. Okay. My name is Alex Zaltzman, a township resident for 9 years, former Board of Education member and president. Want to commend each of you for standing against the 9 Main Street project on the toxic DPW site. You've shown unity to resolve, reflecting the Milburn voters' strong mandate from last year's election. I'm also candidate for Township Committee this year. It's a huge step for our town. You have full support from me on this position of the 9 Main Street DPW site project and fighting against it. In talking to many business owners and residents, the escalation of crime is a major concern for all of us. You have my full support to work with our township police and community to work toward every possible effort to mitigate crime in our town. I also want to thank this committee for working through your differences to support the question on next year's ballot, which will be for Milburn voters to decide on the election of a charter commission under the Faulkner Act. Having served on a nonpartisan governing body in this town for 6 years, the Board of Education, it is my firm belief that we will get more accomplished for our residents and property owners and business owners and visitors by working in a nonpartisan fashion for our town. We are one Milburn, and this is the vote for Milburn. Thank you.
Thank you. Here, Mr. Zaltzman here. You missed the beginning of the meeting.
Oh, sorry. Apologize. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Venkat Bala, 3-year resident. Just want to say a recap of the summertime that we had, and it is a pride for our township that the Parks and Recreation had done a very good job. All the parks and the facilities were operated, and they had functioning bathrooms, restrooms, as well as for kids to come and play and participate in intramural competitions. The second thing is the traffic in the downtown, the north-south connector from Old Short Hills Road was not diverted or blocked as compared to previous years. So that was very refreshing for the township members who needed to access critical places such as the hospitals or to the highway. And also congratulations on the Paper Mill Playhouse facelift approval. And this is like a very important thing for arts, culture, and fine arts. Last but not least, I do not know, but the back to school also worked very well. So if the township members have a part or say in that Board of Education too, like the back to school for all the kids, either elementary, middle school, or higher education and highest secondary school, all worked fine. So I think so, like it's a time to take a pat on the back of everyone to see what has been done right and how it has been improved as compared to the previous year. Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Committeeman Stoller, you can share that with the board then.
Sure. Sure.
Good evening, everyone. This is Chara Goyal from Poet Section. And I wanted to reiterate, Annette, thank you for bringing that up of social media nuances. And there should never be a place of hate and where people would just throw in on assumptions and start admonishing or abusing. We feel like it's a safe place. And we should all be proud of living together in a community which is incredible. We should celebrate the love and respect the differences and try to resolve it in a cordial way rather than just assuming things, creating the hogwash, creating the rumors, admonishing even the volunteers, which I've seen sometimes in the past. So let's just not do all that. Just try to avert from, calling names and just try to work together. And thanks, Annette, for bringing that up. Thanks,
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak? Anyone online? Good evening. You're muted.
Hi, Jay Morielli, resident. First, I'd like to thank the members of the TC for their service to our community. And I have a question for Mr. McDonald. I seem to recall a couple of years ago that Committee Wasserman had proposed adding an additional part-time zoning enforcement officer. And I also seem to recall that had occurred and it was communicated to the public at a TC meeting. Is that correct, or am I mistaken on that? And if it is correct, what happened to the part-time zoning officer, and was that communicated to the community that we were losing that individual? Thank you.
Thank you. No others? Okay. I will close public comment. I just want to say that I did have in my notes to talk about social media, but I crossed it off, but I'm glad that everyone else brought it up, so thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Sure. Mr. McDonald, it'd be great to get an update on the status of the 9/11 memorial. With regards to the transcripts from the hearings, perhaps Mr. Cantor could reassure us that when he was getting up to speed, he went through, I would assume you would have gone through all of the transcripts of the prior court proceedings. And if you haven't, I would assume that you will now, but I would assume that you already did. But maybe you could clarify so that we can put that to rest, because I feel like that's unfortunately come up a number of times. Let's see, Ms. Best, with regards to the native plant resolution, the 70% is a goal that we strive for. And I think it's important that everyone realize this proposed ordinance that we were considering only affects plantings by the township. And there are so many ways that if necessary, the forester can select non-native plants if that's what's required. So I think it's important that when we set goals for ourselves, that we set lofty goals. If we set it at like 60% or 40%, we've already achieved those goals. So when we set a goal, it needs to be something to strive for. So that's why I think the 70% is important. And again, there are exceptions that will allow the town to plant what they need to plant if necessary. Mr. Zaltzman, I think you bring up an interesting point. I understand you came late. So crime actually has gone down, but that's something that we as a township need to communicate to our residents. And we have to find a way to communicate it to our residents without also communicating it to the would-be criminals. But I do think we should do a better job of celebrating the accomplishments of our police department. So maybe that's something that through the new community policing program, they'll be able to bring a better awareness to the community of, these positive developments, or if there are negative developments and people have to be concerned about something, they could do that as well. So we're very much looking forward to that community policing unit. And just in closing, everyone be nice to each other on social media.
Sure. And as I said, Facebook's a cesspool, you know, the brain cells that are killed on that is crazy. Venkat, thank you, good to see you. Thank you for all your support. Christine Bess, I found out I had 2 Japanese maples. I saw they were beautiful little trees on my deck, on my inside deck, 2 beautiful Japanese maples. And I tell you what, I go out there and just beautiful. And that's the deck that's actually, it's a brick patio that's built up with no access from any of the yard or the street. And without those, I would lose some quality of life. And I do understand that this is for public things, whatever, but you know, we have to understand there are some, you know, we all have to be nuanced in our approach and understand that there's going to be gives and takes and such. Mr. Bambera, I agree with you on everything you said. I've known Christine for a long time. There's no one that I think anyone could trust more than her. She's not anti-Semitic. It's absolutely crazy. And then the last piece too, getting, you know, we've, you know, talk about the materiality. The material things we've been really working on are, you know, the stimulating economic activity, bringing down crime, fighting for sensible affordable housing. We all believe in affordable housing. We want it done the right way without the monster impact of putting people on a contaminated dump site. And whether we cap it or not cap it off of a 130-person answered survey, et cetera, you know, just trying to steer the path on the correct path. And I know you're going to talk a little bit about the opinions and such. I was under the impression that there was a fairness hearing done that somewhat closed all of that past transactions down that we could not fight. And if you could confirm that, I'd really appreciate it. Because once that fairness opinion was done by the new judge, it kind of put us in a different spot. I would like some clarification there. No, that's it. I always, you know, finish by saying shop local and drive responsibly. I mean, honestly, I almost got run down last week going across right here. Those blinking lights are in front of Dunkin' Donuts. I mean, it's crazy. This lady yelled at me like it was my fault. Okay. Luckily, I saw it coming. I pressed the button. This thing was blinking like Times Square. It's crazy. So anyway, thank you.
Just one thing, Mr. McDonald, we talked about the traffic study. You had given me some dates as to when the proposals are due back. So can you just go over that for everybody?
Yeah, so just to comment on the traffic study, that is going to be received back on September 26th. We already had quite a bit of interest from a variety of firms. I think 4 or 5 already have picked up that RFP, and we anticipate hearing from them on the 26th. To answer the question about the signage, we are working on a few different signs, not just the 9/11 sign, and we have received some pricing back from the sign company. Now I'm awaiting mock-ups of that signage. So it is in process, and I'll continue to update it at the meetings if you like, but we are working toward it. Yes, the zoning officer. So 2 different things. One is a code enforcement officer who, you know, goes out and issues the ticket or issues the summons to the individual that is in violation of whether it's a general code or a zoning code. And the zoning, the part-time person in the zoning office is administrative help for that zoning office. If you can believe it, we had a one person that was responsible for the planning board and zoning board and all applications and all zoning permits received by those boards and for the review of all those applications. And so we have half a person, and actually My hope is, and we've made overture to make that a full-time position by the end of the year. So nobody was gone, nobody was let go. It was just that we have a full-time code enforcement office and we have one and a half FTEs in the zoning office. And we're hoping that that's 2 by the end of the year.
Thank you, Mayor. So as to the fairness hearing, again, I just want to explain what a fairness hearing is. Because when the residents speak about fairness hearing, they're saying, is this agreement fair to me? That's not what the court is looking at. The court is looking at whether this agreement, excuse me, Mr. Feld, is fair to low and moderate income individuals. And that's based on the affordable housing obligation that Milburn had, what its RDP is, and what its unmet need is, and whether or not the vacant land adjustment is fair. We're not in a position and we're not challenging the fairness hearing. It happened a long time ago. The settlement agreement was approved by this council, by the Township Committee at the time, by 5-0. There was a 45-day prerogative writ period that expired. There is no legal action that can take place regarding the settlement agreement or the fairness hearing. We're challenging the implementation of the agreement and how it was and the DPW site and how the court has improperly enforced the settlement agreement. I have not pulled the transcript from the fairness hearing. I don't know that it's at all relevant to the current legal situation of the township. I'm happy to order it and read it, and I don't know, I'm happy certainly, it'll be additional legal expense, but I'm happy to do it. I'm not quite sure how it's relevant to the current legal situation as the township has an executed settlement agreement, which the court deemed to be fair, and the Township Committee at the time approved.
Thank you. I just want to thank everybody for coming out and, WhatsApp too. That's very dangerous too. So may I have a motion to